I recently spent a great deal of time going really in depth in the study of transactional analysis, which is a bit of a forgotten gem in the field of clinical psychology, very popular in the 60s and 70s through books like I'm OK, You're OK and the games people play. There's one particular concept that I wanted to convey to you in relation to political thinking and the political obsessions that we get caught up in, and the process of getting involved in political arguments on the internet. And that concept is the concept of impasse. An impasse in transactional analysis is a kind of intrapsychic conflict. In transactional analysis, we have the parent, adult, and child ego state, and the idea is that our parent ego state is made up of injunctions and permissions that we internalized from our actual parents and other authority figures in early life, even in infancy to some extent. Ideas about what we should and shouldn't do and be, and ideas about what we need to do in order to gain acceptance and approval from our parents. And when we look at the child ego state, this includes things like our emotional needs, our physiological needs, the basic emotions and needs that any animal or human being has. And this concept of impasse refers to a conflict between the permissions and injunctions of the parent and the natural needs and desires of a child. Of course, these end up within us, these parental models. And so this word impasse refers to an intrapsychic conflict. That voice in your head as you walk around ruminating on politics is fueled by this unresolved conflict between the injunctions of your parental ego state and the natural needs and desires of your child. And I think it's really interesting to see how this impacts adult behavior. One of the arguments is that in order to gain relief from the impasse, the intrapsychic conflict, we try to externalize the conflict through projection and transference. And the most common way we do this is through what they call a type 1 transference, where we take the role of a child and we project the role of a parent or authority figure onto other people. We can see this on the internet quite a lot. In fact, I think pretty much all of the political discussions and debates and arguments are happening between people who are putting themselves into child ego states and people who are projecting parental ego states onto other people, illicitly and inappropriately for the most part, in an attempt to externalize their inner conflict and gain relief from it. Now, the thing with the internet is that often we're interacting with anonymous strangers. All we see is the username, and behind that username is essentially an empty vessel. That is an infinite canvas for projection that we can fill with all of our ideas about the enemy. And sometimes you see arguments between people on the left and the right, and both of them are essentially in a child state, screaming at the other person as if they are their parent, and it usually comes down to a very kind of childish sentiment, such as, "Don't tell me what I can't do," or "Life's unfair." There's very kind of childish emotions going on here, and these unresolved conflicts go on and on and on, much to the displeasure and lack of enjoyment of everyone involved. And so I think actually if you want to get out of political rumination and obsession and you're locked into this addictive habit of arguing about politics on the internet all the time, it's probably best actually to turn inwards and have a look at the unresolved conflicts you have with the messages that you internalized from your parents, because that's actually what's driving it. And as long as you're locked in that impasse and you're playing this game of transference and projection, you're never really engaging with people as they really are. And This explains why so often when we use social media, people talk to us in a way that makes us wonder who they think they're talking to. Like you're talking to someone of a different political disposition and they think they're talking to Big Brother of 1984 fame and that you want to oppress them somehow, when in fact you might feel that freedom is one of your most cherished values. So I think there's a lot in this idea from transactional analysis of impasse, of intrapsychic conflict between our parent and child ego states, and the way in which people are almost addictively engaging in political discussions online. And I suppose we can round things off by thinking about what an ideal or healthy political discussion actually looks like in terms of transactional analysis. Aside from the parent and the child ego state, we have the adult ego state, and we engage the adult ego state when we relate to other people as equals, seeing them as having an inherent value as a human being in the same way that we have faith. We also have inherent value. And the adult ego state is less concerned with emotion, is less concerned with moral judgments and edicts as the parent ego state is more concerned with evidence, with actual engagement with reality as it is, and crucially, it is engaged in problem solving. And we can see a number of political ideologies that are completely divorced from problem solving, completely divorced from the real world implications of what would happen if their childish sentiment was actually realized through politics and X, Y, and Z were banned or X, Y, and Z were permitted, for example. So, note I've avoided taking sides in these political things, as I will generally endeavour to do, because it is my position, at the moment at least, that political thinking is almost inherently psychopathological. There's not much mentally healthy about engaging in political thinking. It often makes us very miserable and angry and frustrated and resentful and all of that, but I suspect a great deal of our political thinking is essentially coming from unresolved psychological issues and inner conflicts, and so it's best to diffuse these conflicts at the root rather than endlessly rehashing the conflicts that you had with your parents, with strangers on the internet, many of whom will happily comply so that they themselves can reenact their relational traumas from childhood.